Hello, my name is Kosta and I'm osteopath. I work with people suffering with all sorts of musculoskeletal injuries. And here next to me is Henry Rogers. I met Henry a few years ago, back at the rowing club, which I belong to. And Henry's been very active, doing all sorts of exercises, rowing, walking, recently done many trips. As a patient, I saw him about a couple of months ago when he came to see me, complaining of low back hip pain.
Well, yes, I'd got a 10 days walking trip planned and I'd been training for it since March, interleaved with my rowing training, of course. And the day I came to see you, I woke up in the morning and I could hardly get out of bed because it hurt so much. And the pain was all the way from the lower back all the way down my feet on my left leg.
Well, first of all, it was an unusual injury for you. It's something that probably you didn't have before.
Never before, no. And my plans were to walk from the Portuguese border to Santiago de Compostela. And I thought, when I woke up with a pain like that, it looks to me as if I'm going to have to cancel, and then there's all the hassle about insurance claims and all the rest of it. Best go and get some sensible advice.
At that point, I did the necessary screening just to make sure that there won't be any underlying life-threatening conditions or anything that can be dangerous to you. We started with various treatments of soft tissue massage around the muscles, manipulation, articulation around the joints to make sure the pelvis, the hips, the knees, the ankles, the spine is all in a line, good position. And as a reassurance at that point, I told you, well, what is the worst thing that can happen? You may have to use public transport, perhaps, but you'll be there. And we decided to start and see how it goes.
And part of the background of the trip is that I'd been learning Spanish, and so by that stage I was sufficiently self-confident in my ability to get taxis, catch buses, and get myself to the next place I needed to be. The problem being, of course, I'd paid for hotels in advance, and unless I cancelled the whole trip and made an insurance claim, the best thing to do was to use the hotels, even if I had to take a bus in between them. Of course, the whole point of the trip was walking, and I would have been very reluctant to miss that. But fortunately, it turned out exactly as you said.
Well, yes, I mean, I was aware of that this trip wasn't just a holiday for you. It was something that you were training towards. It was one of your goals, and it was important for you to achieve it. And not just on a physical level, but also mentally. It was important for you to complete that task. And I asked you at that point, what was the pain from 1 to 10? Do you remember?
Yes, I think I said 8. I think I said 8. And,
yes. And eventually, after several treatments, I think I saw you about 3 or 4 times before you left. Perhaps we saw each other twice a week or once a week for the time being. Then the pain significantly reduced down to lower level, and it was more localized in particular area, in particular pain.
I think I remember, you will have this in your notes of course, but I think I remember saying somewhere around 4 overnight. And already following your advice, I'd started to take light exercise before going off to Spain. And just as you predicted, as soon as I started moving around, the pain alleviated.
It was still sharp, but only on certain movements, and we developed strategies of how to deal with that sort of discomfort when it comes to. And I have to say here, this is the main difficulty, the main issue I face when it comes to treatment musculoskeletal injuries. This is the compliance of the patient, to get the patient responsible for their discomfort and pain. Because as an osteopath I do respect pain. I think respecting pain is very important. Pain is telling us that there is something not how it should be in the body. But when the pain comes, we do need to respect it and see how we can deal with it. So when it comes to patients doing what they've been told to do, in terms of exercise, stretching at home and so on, most of them say they don't have time for this, or it's too complicated, or they have other things to do, or some of them prefer to take a magic pill that can suppress the pain down. And I think that discussion with you was very good, as you were very consistent with the exercise I suggested you should be doing in terms of stretching, even doing them 3 times a day.
It is a help that I'm still involved in competitive sport, and so this became as much an aspect of my training as what I was doing before I had the problem. And the whole business of working towards goals makes accepting advice about what to do next a whole lot easier.
Of course, I mean, time is always a limitation factor, but when it comes to how I can get better, how I can have less of discomfort, there is only so much that the practitioner working with you can do. There is a lot more that the patient can do for themselves.
Well, Costa, you're a coach, a rowing coach, which is why we met, and it seems to me that that's exactly the problem that every athlete faces when listening to their coach. It's up to them, the coach will tell them, but if they don't do it, nothing will happen.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I remember discussing with you the sort of injury you had, and I did say that this sort of injury usually comes to more active people, people who do some sort of activities which involve this sort of twisting and movements. Luckily, you're very active, mobile, and you're doing a lot of exercise, and that's why your body was able to deal so well with the discomfort you had.
Now, when I got to Spain and started walking, even on nights when my back and legs were hurting, as soon as I finished breakfast and got out onto the road, there was no problem. And I found this terribly interesting because pain is there for a purpose, just as you were saying, and at some stage the signals must be going through that all is well and there is no need for a warning.
Absolutely. Very, very often we don't know what is the cause for the pain. Sometimes there are underlying conditions that may cause the discomfort. But as long as you know that there is nothing life-threatening into there, then you can tolerate the discomfort in such a way that you can do things to make it feel better. Most people, especially when they injure themselves, they're scared. They're scared of moving, they're scared of doing anything at all. And this is quite difficult to deal with, because the less you do, the more difficult for the body is to recover. And of course, I don't mean to go back to full activities, but general movements, stretching, mobility is definitely advisable for this sort of injuries.
I did what you suggested and went ahead with the trip, and I was surprised right from day one how well the active part of the trip went, and the fact that sometimes I had difficulty sleeping at night wasn't really that important.
And the question is, have you done the trip? Did you feel happy with it?
Yes, I did feel happy with it for all sorts of reasons. If you look at my diary from my trip last year, you'll see I have been slightly more open about my inner feelings last year than I was this year, because I was focusing so much this year on just getting it done and producing an objective report which is going to reassure you, the practitioner, that the patient was taking what he was being told seriously.
I mean, I really appreciate the work together, the ability to deal with pain, but also knowing that there is support. If something is not as it should be, you always knowing that there is somebody to help you get through that difficult process. And at the same time, you have done what you wanted to do, and it was some sort of discomfort. How did you manage to deal with that discomfort throughout the days?
Well, during the day it wasn't a problem, during the night it was, and I did take Nurofen regularly during the trip, uncomfortably aware that one should not be too dependent on that sort of thing anyway, and that prolonged use of that sort of painkiller can have adverse side effects, particularly for people of my age. Fortunately, the pain was not sufficiently great at night to tempt me into taking more than the recommended dose. Fortunately, my trip was short enough so that I wasn't taking it for a period which was outside the limits recommended on the packet. Before I went, you warned me to be careful. When we got back, I was able to say that I had been careful. But without painkillers of some sort, I would have found sleeping quite hard.
Health practitioner point of view, did you find some of the stretching exercise helpful?
Yes, I did.
Were you able to find a comfortable position in bed at night by using, as we discussed, pillow between
yes.
the knees, changing the position in a way?
Because I was staying in hotels rather than in pilgrim albergues, there were enough pillows. It was comfortable surroundings rather than sparse surroundings, and so I was able to support the leg which was causing trouble in the way you recommended, and that made a huge difference. Now I found when I got back home that I still needed it for another 10 days, but I no longer do. And also, since I've been back into training for rowing, and with each training session goes, and always has gone, a long flexibility session.
Absolutely. And moving into your next goal.
Getting back into training this autumn is interesting. On the basis of what I was doing in the spring leading up to Masters Championships, I'm somewhere off the pace. On the other hand, the foundation for high intensity training is a solid endurance base. Now I think the hundreds of kilometres I walked in training and on the Camino last year and this have been a positive factor in my rowing, and very much better for somebody my age, I think, than running, because running it produces wear and tear on joints, doesn't it? I'm thinking about the number of people who have said to me, yeah, I used to run quite a bit, but my knees didn't like it. And I can remember years ago I had some knee problems as a result of running 2 or 3 marathons, and the physiotherapist who treated me said, now look, be sensible, you're a rower, not a runner. And I remembered an incident a few days before. I'd been running along the towpath towards Richmond Bridge, and a proper runner came by, and they didn't really seem to be landing on the ground. They were sort of running through the air because they were so relaxed and so light. And of course the physiology of runners and rowers, or at least of distance runners and rowers, is really quite different, isn't it?
But the ability to be able to be active
Ah, yes.
and keep fit.
That's something which is common to people of all shapes and sizes.
And what I found fascinating is how quickly the body can actually recover from sort of musculoskeletal injury. The body recovers probably quicker than the mind can perceive it. What would be your advice, Henry, to all those people with bad backs, painful hips, and all sorts of aches into their bodies?
The first thing is, of course, seek expert advice, because if you're just blundering on without advice, you won't get anywhere, and you may make things worse.
And how important, to your understanding, is having a set goal, something that you can aim towards?
I think goal setting is fundamental, and I certainly find myself that just talking about it isn't enough. You actually want to put it on paper.